Welcome back to Fox Recaps. Today, I'm going to explain the movie Cronos, released in the year 1993. The movie revolves around an alchemist named Umberto Oganelli. In 1536, he fled from the Inquisition and disembarked in Veracruz, Mexico. There, he was appointed as the official watchmaker to the viceroy, and with years passing by, he became determined to perfect an invention which would provide him the key to eternal life. The device was named the Cronos device, and it was hidden under the base of a statue of an archangel. By appearance, the device is kind of a golden watch in the shape of a metal scarab. 400 years earlier, one night in 1937, a part of a building's wall suddenly collapsed, killing many people. Amongst the victims was a man of strange skin, the color of marble in moonlight. The old man's chest was mortally pierced, and his last words were, "Sua tempore." The old man was none other than Oganelli. The authorities located the residence of the dead man, and the things they found were never fully revealed to the public. After a brief investigation, the mansion and its contents were sold at public auction. However, the Cronos device was never mentioned on any list or inventory. As far as anyone knew, it never existed. Moreover, a human male was found hanging from his feet with his blood draining into a basin at Oganelli's house. The movie then cuts to the year 1996, where we're shown an antique shop which belongs to Jesus Gris. One day, the archangel shows up in the antique shop, and Jesus and his granddaughter, Aurora, find it. After this, we're taken to the factory of an old millionaire named De La Guardia. De La Guardia is afraid of dying, so he lives in an antiseptic chamber. The man has spent his life acquiring old statues of archangels in search of the hidden Cronos device. When De La Guardia learns about the statue, he sends his nephew, Angel, to buy the archangel. However, unbeknownst to them, Jesus sells the statue without the Cronos device. Meanwhile, after Angel leaves, Jesus checks the Cronos device and accidentally activates it. At first, it looks safe, but to his horror, 6 cockroach-like legs protrude from the orb and hold fast to his hand, digging into his palm. He swiftly returns back home, and his girlfriend Mercedes treats his wound, pulling out a stinger-like metal filling from his palm. That night, Jesus doesn't feel very well. He goes to drink some water from the fridge, but the thing which attracts him the most is the bright red meat. Restless, he sets the watch in motion again, and a 4th sting comes out of the backside of the watch. The next morning, Jesus gets a shave, and surprisingly, his face looks much younger. However, he ignores it and simply tells his girlfriend that he looks younger because he shaved his white-haired mustache. The next day, Jesus feels more energetic. Despite this, he doesn't think much of the strange Cronos device. Later, Angel's men break into his shop and ransack it when they find the statue sold by him empty. Enraged, Jesus goes over to his factory to confront him. However, they end up sitting down for a talk, and De La Guardia shows him a manuscript written by Oganelli in which he's talked about the Cronos device. De La Guardia reveals that he's dying of his sickness, and no treatment has worked so far, so Cronos is his last hope. Furthermore, it's revealed that there's an insect trapped inside the device. A while later, De La Guardia eventually notices the bandage on Jesus' hand and realizes that he's already used the device on himself. Scared for his life, Jesus cleverly tricks the old man and runs away. Sadly, when he returns home, he finds the Cronos device missing. He suspects Aurora of taking it and rushes to the rooftop to find her. There, he learns that the little girl had picked up the Cronos simply to play with it. Surprisingly, Aurora gets frightened by her grandfather's new appearance, but Jesus quickly calms her down and takes the Cronos back from inside her teddy bear. Following this, he uses the device again, this time to his chest. He is still guessing about the nature of the Cronos, but feels like it's doing him good. Over the course of the next few days, he continues to use the device, and it makes him more and more energetic, which does wonders for his married life. One day, Mercedes insists on going with him to the New Year's Eve party. Jesus agrees, and Mercedes wonders how anyone can change so fast in such a short period of time. Later, the duo dance romantically at the party. However, Aurora, who's also with them, remains isolated. At the same New Year's Eve party, A man gets hurt and starts bleeding profusely. Surprisingly, Jesus can't refrain from following the man to the gents' toilet and making small talk. He also cannot stop himself from staring at the spilled blood. Here we get to know that the device makes a person thirsty for blood, much like a vampire. As a result, Jesus gets down on the floor to lick the blood stain. Just then, Angel arrives there and knocks him out with a kick. Later, Jesus wakes up in Angel's car, where the latter beats him up and orders him to hand over the device. When Jesus refuses to oblige, he gets pushed off a cliff, seemingly to his death. The next day, Mercedes is heartbroken by Jesus' death, but she nevertheless arranges a funeral. When De La Guardia learns of the news, he loses his cool and punishes Angel with his stick until he starts bleeding from his nose. After a good beatdown, De La Guardia sends his nephew to Jesus' funeral to make sure that he's really died. Obliging to the order, Angel goes to the place and tries to wake Jesus up by closing his nostrils. After a while, he finally becomes convinced and leaves. Later, a funeral technician named Tito prepares the crematorium to burn the coffin, but there are problems with the gas and the piping, as all the tubes and pipes are really old and they would need maintenance. As a result, he's forced to leave the room to solve the problem. Just then, Jesus comes back to life and escapes from the place. Meanwhile, the crematorium worker burns the coffin, oblivious to the fact that it's empty. Elsewhere, Jesus realizes that the Kronos device confers immortality. However, his flesh also starts peeling off, exposing a strange layer of skin, the color of marble in moonlight. In the next scene, on a freezing night, Jesus walks dazed, confused, and with a gray, wounded face. He stops by a rubbish bin and he sees his own printed obituary. Devastated, he tries to phone Mercedes, but the latter thinks it's a prank and hangs up. Later, he finally reaches home to see it decorated with Christmas lights. There, he's welcomed by Aurora, who innocently asks him where he was. By this point, Jesus feels very weak and tired, so he uses the Kronos on himself once again. Though he becomes energetic, he also learns of a deadly side effect. With continuous usage of the device, daylight has now become fatal to Jesus. As a result, he's forced to sleep inside an old trunk. Despite his sad condition, little Aurora paints the trunk to cheer him up and keeps on playing. One day, Jesus writes a long letter to Mercedes. He writes that he just wants her to know that somehow he's still alive and being alive is very painful. Jesus tells her that he's been entangled in some shady business and he's going to solve it. He adds that if he's lost something, he'd like to know why. He hopes that when he returns back, she will be willing to see him despite his appearance. Afterwards, Jesus goes to De La Guardia's warehouse. There, he realizes that Aurora has followed him all the way. He tries to scare her away, but without success. The two then look around the warehouse for more information about the device. Luckily, the little girl manages to find the mysterious book written by Umberto Oganelli. In the next scene, Jesus goes through the book but realizes that some pages are missing. By this point, his whole body has turned white, as if he doesn't have any blood left in him. Just then, De La Guardia arrives at the scene and tells them that he has eaten the missing pages from the book. He then takes off some pieces of dangling skin from Jesus' face, which somewhat feels metallic. While distracting Jesus with a conversation, De La Guardia rings the bell for his nephew. Angel is pissed off at being disturbed by his uncle so late at night, but he nevertheless heads out to inspect. Meanwhile, De La Guardia tells Jesus that he needs the artifact to keep himself alive, and that he also needs human blood. Hearing this, Jesus shows him the device and pleads for help to get out of his misery. However, De La Guardia is unfazed by the emotional outburst, and he instead attacks Jesus viciously in order to take his heart. Witnessing this, Aurora becomes alarmed and quickly springs into action. She grabs a long stick and hits De La Guardia in the head, knocking him out. A while later, Jesus wakes up, but De La Guardia bleeds to death. Seeing this, Jesus drinks the blood from his corpse like a barbarian. Meanwhile, Angel arrives, and Jesus and Aurora are forced to hide. When Angel finds his uncle dead, he laughs hysterically as he will now inherit the entire property. Suddenly, De La Guardia, who is surprisingly alive, asks for help, but Angel eventually finishes him off as he's tired of waiting. As he's celebrating his victory, Jesus ambushes him from behind and runs outside with Aurora. They run to the rooftops as Angel follows them. Angel eventually corners the duo, and as a result, Jesus forces his granddaughter to run, while he confronts Angel. Sadly, he's of no match, as Angel repeatedly hits him with a metal rod. Soon, he becomes weak and is unable to defend himself. Sensing the opportunity, Angel tries to go after Aurora, but Jesus musters the last of his strength and throws himself at Angel's body, making them both fall to the ground. In the next scene, it's revealed that Angel didn't survive the fall, but Aurora sets the mechanism into motion to revive Jesus. She then caresses her grandfather's deformed face, which has turned like that of a zombie's. Sad, she offers her blood to Jesus, but the latter somehow manages to reject it with supreme effort. He then removes the Kronos from his chest and uses a stone to break it into pieces. The movie ends as Jesus returns back to his old trunk, with Mercedes and Aurora caring for him. He waits for the day his immortality will end so that he can end his misery once and for all. That was all from the video. I hope you liked it. Subscribe for more content like this, and hit the like button to help us out. Also, leave a comment if you want us to recap your favorite movie. Until next time, take care.